today we're pleased to have Dr. Doug Ramsey from UtahView presenting to us today about Landsat analysis-ready data, which I think many of us have, if we have not used it, we've definitely heard about it, and there's a few learning curves associated with the format of the data and just essentially getting it ready for the analysis-ready data portion of our efforts. And so just a couple things. If you haven't, please do mute your phones or your microphones. We don't want to get any feedback. We want to make sure everybody can hear okay. We are recording this session, and so we'll have this available via the AmericaView YouTube channel, hopefully tonight, but certainly by tomorrow. So you can pass it on to your colleagues, students, and other folks that might be interested. And I think with that, we've got a good group. We'll go ahead and turn the time over to Doug Ramsey. He's a professor and director of the Remote Sensing GIS Lab at USU in Logan, Utah. Doug's been the director of the lab for, what is it, Doug, like 25 years, 20 years? A while now.
Way too many years.
Way too many years. But USU has a really strong remote sensing GIS program, and with many thanks and kudos to Doug for setting that up and getting that going, and certainly fostering it through the years, and for all of his work with UtahView. Between he and the rest of the folks at the Remote Sensing GIS Lab, they've done a fantastic job. So Doug, with that, I'll turn it over to you and go ahead and take it away.
All right, thanks, Chris, and thank you for having me do this for you. I've been working with the ARD data since it came out to everyone else in I don't know, mid to late fall of this past year, and I put together this tutorial as a way to introduce the data set. It doesn't go through higher level analyses. It basically describes the data set and shows what you can do with it in brief. So let's get going here. I pulled my data sources from 3 different sources. Sorry for the redundancy. The first was the Landsat ARD homepage, which is at landsat.usgs.gov/ARD. And that has a link to the data format control book, which is an excellent reference. It's not the easiest Sunday reading, but it's a great source of information. It's where I pulled a lot of the specifics, especially for the quality assurance bands from. And I also downloaded an entire collection for the horizontal 8 and vertical 7 tile for Landsat, which basically covers the area around Logan, spanning 1984 to 2017 from Earth Explorer. So that's basically what I'm working with here. So the ARD, the basic strategy for the analysis-ready data for Landsat is to provide the user, any user, the more advanced user or the lay user, with a data set that is spatially and spectrally consistent, and more to the point, that a data set that you have to do very little to in order to get it ready to work with. So in the old days meaning a few months ago, when we downloaded imagery, we would have to atmospherically correct it in some way, radiometrically normalize it to get it ready. All this is done already with the ARD data set, so it's a great step forward in that sense. So conceptually, all you really have to do is download the data, import it to your system of choice, image processing software of choice, and get going. So you don't have to do anything to the data set really, other than import it, and of course download it. So basically, that's the primary goal, but also the goal is to provide a data set that is consistently processed, so that you know, tile for tile or image for image, that these images have been processed in the same way. We all have our own different routines of atmospherically and radiometrically normalizing data, This does it in a standardized way, so it's consistent. And if they figure out a better way to do it, which of course we always will, they can reprocess it to that next level. So it's been normalized to the highest level that we have available now. One of the strangest parts of this data set is that the Landsat imagery is no longer delivered in that parallelogram path row format. It has been broken up into these tiles, and they use the University of South Dakota, or South Dakota State, I almost got in trouble there, WELD project grid format in order to do this with. So here's the grid. This grid covers a lower 48. There's a separate grid for Alaska and Hawaii each. So if you live in any one of those states or are interested in working in those states, then there's a different grid for that state, but they're projected to the same projection, to an Albers equal area conic WGS84, which matches the WELD product. Each grid across the country is 150 kilometers on a side, and with a 30-meter pixel, that means you have a 5,000 by 5,000 pixel matrix within each one of those grids. So within that grid, they census every single image that falls within that grid or intersect that grid. So here we have, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different images that will intersect that particular grid that I'm sampling. And every one of those images that intersect that grid gets sampled, no matter how small the pixel frequency is for that particular image. So that essentially reformats the data into this grid, and it allows you to densify the temporal stack. So if you're just working with individual path row images, you're limited to, I guess, at least the overlap in time between Landsat 7 and Landsat 8, or one of the older sensors. Here you have the overlap of adjacent images that are all processed and ready for you to go for you. Okay, as far as the data organization is concerned, that's a brief introduction to the tiling system. There are 4 products with this. Actually, there are 3 products, with the quality assurance product as the 4th product that's available to download. They have the top of atmosphere, which has the images have been normalized at top of atmosphere reflectance. They have the surface reflectance product, which is exactly the same, except it's been adjusted for surface reflectance, so atmospherically corrected. So that represents the best interpretation of what reflectance would be at the surface, whereas a top of atmosphere would be the best approximation of reflectance, assuming that atmosphere was not there. There's brightness temperature. That is, of course, from the thermal data, and there's a quality assurance. Now, you don't have to download all 4 of these. You can pick the one you want. So typically, either the top of atmosphere or the surface reflectance. I tend to download the surface reflectance. I did, though, for this exercise, download all 4 of these, and that was an experience because there are a lot of tiles. Landsats 4 through 7 have a slightly different same structure, but different data content, because of course there are different sensors, but they fall under the same categories, pretty much the same quality assurance layers, some differences. The ancillary data sets for top of atmosphere, spectral bands, each one. It doesn't have, for Landsat 7 and 8, it does not have the panchromatic band, just the multispectral bands. And of course, the metadata file are associated with this. Okay, so in summary, for the data organization, every Landsat image collected from, in this case, 1982 to the present, and it's ongoing, for every sensor has been intersected for that particular grid. For this particular grid that I looked at, H08 V07, we have 3,038 individual images. So 3,038 individual surface reflectance, 3,038 individual top of atmosphere, and so forth. The other tiles I've downloaded have approximately the same number of individual images per collection. Each tile contains the different products and associated metadata, and supported ancillary data sets. And the ancillary data sets are kind of cool. I'll show you that in a second. Each one of the 3,000 individual dates have about 11 or 12 different images across all products. So if you download everything, you'll end up with some 33,000 individual data sets. And I'm not including individual bands. I've combined the bands into multi-layer images here. Otherwise, you'd have 7 times that many about. So if you download everything, you have a lot of data to work with. All right, so here's an example. This is a 32-day period collected in 2017 over that particular grid, showing the image for Landsat 8 to start, path 3831. Then you have 3731, 3931, 38, back to 3831 for Landsat 7, and so forth. So within this 32-day period, 2 16-day periods, or almost a month, just over a month, we have 13 tiles. 5 of those are pretty much covering the entire grid. So the 3831 product, which this tile centers over, pretty much covers the entire grid with a small sliver missing. And then you have the adjacent path rows. Now this overlap that you see here with the adjacent path rows is going to change depending on latitude, of course. The farther north you go, the more overlap you're going to have, and the farther south you go, the less overlap you're going to have. This is basically the overlap we have in our neck of the woods. So we have 13 individual images that we can pick from, potentially 9 different observations for every pixel, okay, except for that center part. That center part, we're only going to have 5. Okay, so I got interested. I was wondering how many pixels, how many observations I had for each pixel. So I wrote a small script that looked through all 3,000 individual frames and counted up all the pixels that were non-fill pixels. So they're actual data pixels. And this is the distribution. So the colder, the bluer it is, the less overlap. And the redder it is, the most overlap. So you can kind of see that the orange areas are about 50–60% overlap. So 50 or 60% of the images of those 3,000 images had valid data along these areas here too, along these orange areas. And of course, the blue areas are where the overlap doesn't exist. Those are just individual images. Between days, the distance between days, about 40% of those images were 1 day apart. 10% of those images were 2 days apart, and so forth. So you can kind of see what the temporal frequency is going to be with these individual images that they download, or that they process so you can download. Okay, so here are the examples of the 4 different products. The top of atmosphere, or the at-sensor reflectance, are not atmospherically corrected. They're basically converted to reflectance at the sensor. The surface reflectance is the same thing, but it's been corrected for atmosphere. So that represents the best approximation of surface reflectance. And then we have these 2 brightness temperature bands. These are for Landsat 8, of course, because there are 2 bands here. The previous Landsats would only have 1 of these brightness temperatures. These are not corrected for atmosphere. They're just basically converted to temperature, or temperature at sensor, or radiance calculated at sensor. Ancillary data sets. All right, to me, these are the coolest parts, because when we typically used to correct for reflectance, at sensor reflectance, we would apply solar elevation angles, the bias and gain values, and we would get our normalized product. But we would only have that one estimate of solar elevation, okay, or solar zenith angle. These products provide solar zenith angles and solar azimuth angles. That's an error in the, I have solar zenith twice. There should be solar zenith and solar azimuth between the two. I guess yeah, okay. I just made one mistake. I think the one to the right is supposed to be solar azimuth. Each pixel has an estimate of solar zenith, and each pixel has an estimate of solar azimuth, and each pixel has an estimate of sensor zenith and sensor azimuth. Okay, so you just don't use one pixel for one value for the entire image, which is what we used to do. Every pixel has its basic look angle, bidirectional look angle, which provides a much better representation, or theoretically should provide much better representation of what reflectance is on a per pixel basis. The quality assurance data sets tend to vary by sensor. Landsat 8 has its own suite of quality assurance layers, and Landsats 4 through 7 have their own. They're very similar. There's a couple of differences. But these four basic ones, the lineage, so there's a data set that tells you for every pixel in that particular tile where the image came from, or where the pixel came from. So in this case, it was the 3831 path row image that covers almost the entire grid. And of course, the data strip was sliced into the different rows, but they retained that. So the purple areas are path 3830, the green are 3831, and the red is 3832. And you can have up to 3 potential images within one tile for that particular date. The pixel quality layer is an approximation of whether the ground is cloud covered, cirrus covered in the case of Landsat 8, snow covered, water covered, a number of different aspects, and I'll show you a table later on that will describe those. There's a radiometric saturation, so which pixels have been saturated, so hit its peak. And then there's an aerosol quality for the atmospheric corrected data sets. And these all come packaged with each product. So the top of atmosphere will have all but the aerosol quality, and the surface reflectance will have all, including the atmosphere aerosol quality layer, so that you can basically backtrack. It's an excellent transparency scheme in order to allow people to know exactly where the data came from and how they processed it. And the pixel quality layer allows you to triage the pixels. So once you sample them, you can use the pixel quality layer to identify which ones are clear pixels, which ones are snow-covered pixels, which ones are cloud or cloud shadow covered pixels, and then toss them out of the analysis immediately. It's not a perfect estimate. For instance, in Utah, if you go to our West Desert, the West Desert is constantly, 365 days a year, covered in snow, okay? Which is not true, but the playa bottoms look exactly like snow. So there are errors in this classification for pixel quality, but for general purposes, it works just fine. And we've been able to use that to exclude pixels that we didn't want in our analysis, and it cleans up the data quite a bit. So here's the pixel quality layer. And for those of you who are not aware of how USGS has been organizing these are bit-packed data sets. So they're 16-bit data sets in the case of Landsat 8. And each bit or pair of bits within the 16 bits has been assigned a certain flag or a certain category. So you can see on the left-hand side there, the table. So bit 0 is a fill pixel. So it tells you whether it's a fill area or not. So the area, the triangular area up at the top here, top northwest corner of the image, is essentially would be a fill pixel, would be coded as 1. Clear, so that bit identifies whether the image is clear. Bit 2 is water, and so forth. So you can kind of see exactly how they parsed out the different bits. And of course, depending on whether those bits are turned on or off, you get a numerical value in the image. which allows you to either just to quickly identify what you want, or you can build a tool to interpret each one of these bits and extract exactly what you want out of the data set. So these two tables show the possible different pixel quality values that I found in the 3,038 images that I looked at. So the one to the left is for Landsat 7 and 427. That's how they're coded, because there's different band complement, of course, in Landsat 427 versus 8. So those are the values that are associated with the different possibilities that I found in my data set. Okay, there might be others in other data sets. The table to the right is basically the Landsat 8 version of the table to the left. So you can see that there's a lot of different possible combinations. Some of them, like 388 is water, 392 is cloud shadow, medium confidence cloud, low confidence cirrus, and so forth. So you can sort of pick out which ones you want. For this example, I used 322, which represents clear, low confidence cloud, and low confidence cirrus. And it's equivalent in Landsat 427 to 66, which is clear, low cloud confidence. Basically, these are theoretically the best, purest pixels that provide the best values for reflectance. All the other ones are compromised in some degree or another, but still allows you to pick out which ones you want. Okay, how do we analyze it? Basically, it's a typical temporal type of analysis where you're looking at a specific point or sample or pixel or polygon, and you're tracking that polygon through time. Now, since these are already geometrically normalized and geometrically registered, all you have to do is import them and sample it. It's just as easy as that. So it's really, really nice. It's really, really simple in that way. And all we have to do is figure out how to handle 3,000, all these images, which these days isn't too big of a deal. But the critical thing here is that you should always automate this. Okay. And there are about 3,038 obvious reasons why you should automate it. Because you don't want to, if you're going to import these, and you don't have to import them into multi-channel stacks, you can leave them in as original TIFFs, individual band TIFFs. It just depends on how you want to organize your data. You still have a lot of data there. And in order to sample that, in order to process it efficiently, writing scripts and batching it or automating it somehow is going to be critical. So, so here we have 3,038 images stacked on top of each other. We drop a sample point through it, and we extract the data. In this case, I wrote a short Python script that extracted the point values and dumped it to a table. So here's my table. And with the table, I have the sensor, I have the date of acquisition, which I can just get from the file name. In this case, I have the individual spectral bands. The ultra blue is not applicable for Landsat 5, but for Landsat 8, of course, I have spectral values down there for the, and then I have the spectral values for each one of the other bands, and I have the pixel quality layer. From this basic table, and you can write it any way you want. You can generate the digital or the image version of the NDVIs if you want to do NDVIs and do it that way. I basically extracted the table and then calculated my NDVI based on the table. So the NDVI you see here on the table is just a function of running the red and the infrared through a formula in Excel and outputting that. But then I have the pixel quality layer over here. All right, so there I ended up with 1,421 samples. These 1,421 samples are the images that responded with any pixel value other than a fill pixel. So if it was a fill pixel, I dropped it. I didn't include it in the table, of course, because they're just zero values. There's no reason to keep it. So about 46% of all of the images that I had a valid sample for this particular point. If we plot that across time, this is what we get. This is the raw NDVI, regardless of pixel quality, for each one of those 1,400 images. If we sample it and extract only those with clear pixel quality flags, so 66 versus and 322, we end up with 819 of those 1,400 samples, or 819 of the 3,038 images, or about 27% of our image stack provided pixels that had a clear designation for both Landsat 8 and Landsat 7. Of course, if you want to collect more points, you can reduce this this to include not only clear with low confidence, but you can maybe do some clear to medium confidence clouds if you're comfortable doing that. I just kept it simple and just kept the clear low confidence cloud, low confidence cirrus pixels, so I get the clearest ones possible. But we still have a fairly dense data set across 33 years of history that we can pull from. I've also actually tried to see quickly if there's a trend between Landsat, the different Landsat platforms, in the NDVI that it provides. So you can see a lot of up and down still going on here. And no, I can't see a real trend. So Landsat 5 doesn't give a slightly different NDVI than Landsat 7 or 8. They're all kind of mixed in together. So all those up and downs are basically just nuances in the atmosphere that maybe pass through the pixel quality routine. So it's just noise in the system, but it doesn't seem to be keyed into any one of the platforms. This is just the 2014, right? So you don't have to download all 33 years. You can download whatever temporal span you want. So this is just 1 year. I just extracted this from the original data set, and I have 70 images that provided spectral data, and these are the pixel values or the NDVI values for those 70 images plotted against that year. And if I just select the pixel values that have quality, or the pixels that have quality estimates of 66 and 322, so clear pixels, this is what I get, the blue line with the red dots. So you can see with the little insets that I made that this image is snow covered. That's this image here. I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, moving around. So this first image is snow covered. I dropped that one. This one, the second one is cloud covered. I dropped that one. The third one is a Landsat 7 SLC off data set. I kept that one. That had a pixel, that had a quality assurance value of 66. And then the next one, this next example is 322. And you can see them across here. The other two that were dropped were these, the 224 one, Landsat 7 SLC off. It looks like there's a hazy cloud above that field that I sampled. And of course, the 992 is just completely packed in with a cloud. And 328 was the odd one for me. The one on the far right, to me, that looks like it's okay, but then when I looked at it closely, it's basically a cloud shadow. So that pixel landed basically on the edge of a cloud shadow, so that's why it was given a flag of 328 and why I dropped it from the analysis. So it really smooths it out a lot, given if you just drop out those non-clear pixel values. Okay, another example. The one before was based on a point. This is based on a polygon. Now, I wrote the script that samples for points. Chris needed it to work on his dissertation, to extract some data for his research. He happened to show it to our head programmer, Chris Gerard, who said, "Yeah, I can do it better." So she did, because she can. And she wrote this script in Python, but using Jupyter, which is a utility in Anaconda, the Anaconda version of Python that allows you to web enable your analyses. So here you see this is actually a chaining that occurred in 2009. So you can see the inset image there. Down below, you have two red polygons. The circle area is an area that was not chained. And then the polygon was an area that was chained. So you can see that what I'm showing here with the red line or the orange line is going to be that unchained area. So you can see the standard up and down NDVI, non-changing, non-varying, relatively non-varying NDVI across the 33 years of time. But once it's chained, you can see the next image down below. Now that area has been chained, you can see how the blue line now drops down. So it makes sense for this area that the NDVI occurs this way, because the juniper sands are reflecting a lot of infrared light, absorbing a lot of red light for photosynthesis. So there's a fairly strong NDVI signal coming from it. The grasses don't have as strong of an NDVI signal, and the timing of the signal is different. So you can see that after the chaining, the signal basically went down and it's starting to creep up again because the grasses are starting to come back in after the chaining. I hope to be able to use this data to see how quickly sites like this, treatment sites like this, come back to more of a stable type of landscape. So we can see that the trend is slightly up with this NDVI, and just because we're having more grasses coming to the system, mostly grasses and a few shrubs. This is just a blow up of the same area for 2000 and, well, I guess I go from 08 all the way to 2017. So you can see what happens when you zoom into a shorter time span. Okay, and all of this was actually fairly easy. The hardest part of this is basically writing the code, which Chris Gerard did, and I didn't have to, so it was really easy for me. This is another site south of the previous site, showing pre-chaining of a juniper site. This is a medium density juniper site. This is a grass site. The green area, the green line, is a grass environment that never really had much juniper in it, just mostly grasses and shrubs. And this is a denser juniper site just adjacent to both of these other sites that was chained in at the end of 2011. And you can see that it's gone down, and the NDVI flux is basically matching the grass shrub curve, which is what they hope it will do. So you can use this to compare sites. Some of the issues, and I'll show you a demonstration of the tool, the Jupyter tool that Chris put together here in a second. Here's some of the issues I found with this data set. For one thing, to me, the most, I guess I shouldn't say irritating because that's kind of negative, but I'll say irritating, is downloading all the images, just because it takes time. The Earth Explorer site, which allows you to download it, would only allow you to bulk download up to 500 individual files, so 500 individual dates. If you want to download the entire history, about 3,000 images, it's going to take 6 bulk orders to do it. And they come to you separately, then you have to start them up and get them downloaded. And so that takes a lot of my time or student time or whatever. And it ends up taking about 2 or 3 days to download all of that data, not because the internet is slow, but because it just takes somebody to babysit it. And we're not that reliable sometimes. So it takes some time. It also takes about 1 or 2 days to import all if you want to make a multi-channel stacks. But that's just because I'm probably a poor Python programmer. Somebody can probably write something that's much faster than I can. And if I had a much better computer or a faster multiprocessor, I could probably do it faster. But just to download, the good thing is that just to download and get the data, the 33 years of data ready to analyze, only took about 4 or 5 days, which is really good. Before, it used to take us weeks to months to do this. especially even if we were just doing it 6 months ago, because we would have to process all the data. Now it's all processed for us. So within a week, you can have everything ready to go, and it's really nice. So one thing that would be nice is to be able to download these images from the USGS in a more automated fashion. I'm not sure if I've tried to find different tools to do that with. There's some out there, but I haven't had anything work yet. It would also be nice if Google added it to their Google Earth engine, which I'm sure they're considering already if they haven't done it. All right, so to end this, I'll show you the, let me switch over there. Oh, it'll be this one. This is a tool that Chris Gerard put together. It's basically written in Python using Jupyter, which is a web-based editing or processing tool. And it's all modularized to different, what I call subroutines, but she'll call classes or objects. I'm an old Fortran programmer, so everything's a subroutine to me. And in this case, this tool allows you to pick the sensor that you want, pick the pasture. So this comes out of the shapefile, the ArcMap shapefile. So these are all the different treatments that I had in my analyses. I can pick one of them. So South Canyon treated number 4. If I click on it, run interact, it won't run through the data set. What she's done here is already processed the samples. So we've already intersected all the polygons through the images. That'll take about, depending on the number of polygons you have, a couple of hours. I had a lot of polygons. And it'll generate an HDF file with all the data in it. And all this Python script does is read that HDF file and extract the values depending on how we query it. So this is the treated site for the South Canyon. We can look at we can compare it to a untreated site. It'll take a little bit longer for it to run that. So now we have the untreated, the treated versus the untreated locations. We can also, in this particular case, we can zoom in and examine it a little bit more closely, or we can turn on. Also, you have the ability to select the different time sequence that you want. This is the original data. So you can see the original pixel values regardless of pixel quality. Then we have an interpolated. So these are different. These are just the pure pixels, but interpolated in different ways. So you can add your own interpolation to it. So we have an interpolated, a smooth, and a final, which is basically very close to the smooth version of it. So you can quickly go through and analyze your data sets. So that is a quick introduction into the ARD product. I know it was kind of quick. Hopefully, if you're really interested in it, you'll start working on it, which will be the best way to do it, working with the data set. If not, I guess you can entertain yourself by listening to the video again at any given time. So thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer whatever you have. If there's anybody still there.
Doug, there's a question in the chat. It says,
all right, let me go over there.
What is the radiometric normalization used, and if it's relative, what is the target platform, sensor, and or approximate date?
That one I can't answer directly. The radiometric normalization, so the conversion to top of atmosphere is basically the use of the bias and gain values and the solar zenith and azimuth and sensor zenith and azimuth look angles to correct top of atmosphere. The atmospheric correction, the surface reflectance, that one uses I can't remember the algorithm now. It doesn't use a standard per se. It's a modeled algorithm based on atmospheric quality, which they extract from other sensors. I can see that. Do you know the difference between weld and ARD? The only thing I really focused on with the weld and ARD was the tile structure, and they basically just used the weld data or the weld tiling structure. I'm not sure what the spectral differences are. Maybe they're the same depending on if it seems like if they use the weld architecture to tile everything, they might have used the same routines in weld or maybe improved upon them to generate the products. Yeah, the technical documentation is in that landsat.usgs.gov/ARD website.
Doug, we posted our questions in the chat.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to read them. They're coming in kind of quickly. Both tiers from 1 and 2. It uses Landsat 1, the Landsat 1 tier. It doesn't use the Landsat 2.
Right.
Hey, Doug,
the Python code, I can go ahead.
Hey, Doug, this is Chris Barnes out of the Eros Data Center. Can you hear us?
Yes, Chris.
Great presentation. Thank you. I'm just wondering, we actually have maybe 2 points, but a great presentation. I'm just wondering on your data download, if you had an option to access Landsat ARD that was in the cloud and in a visualization and analysis interface, would you still need to download that volume of data, or would you prefer to do your analysis online?
If it was available on the cloud, so if it was on GEE or something like that, then it would save it'll save 2 or 3 days and a lot of disk space to download all that. I've been dreaming about doing it for the whole state of Utah, which covers about I don't know, 13 or 14 different grids. So I'd have to download all of those and process them to get a statewide assessment of things. If I had it on the cloud, it would be much nicer.
Okay. All right. I would like to follow up with you after your presentation, so I'm going to drop you an email.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you.
As far as the Python code, I'll talk to Chris Gerard about sprucing it up a little bit, and maybe we can make that available to people. So Pete, have you considered how to auto-detect change from your ST trajectories, ST, state and transition? I haven't looked at how to detect the change itself. I was just looking at, I've only been working with this for about 2 or 3 months, so I've only been able to identify a comparison between 2 different sites. I don't know about APPEEARS, so I have to Google that one. Ah, okay, gotcha. I'll Google it and download it. Anything that would help me download the data or access the data would be really nice.
Okay, any other questions for Doug? Okay, well, Doug, thank you very much. We'll plan on once this recording is all tidied up, we'll get it posted. Certainly, if you would like to email Doug, feel free to follow up with him directly.
Chris?
Yeah, Ramesh, go ahead.
I think there is like a question from Arthur that's not answered. Arthur Ensley.
Oh, I missed that one. Where is it?
Is it the documentation?
Oh, the link to the technical documentations. It's in the PowerPoint, but it's at landsat.usgs.gov/ARD. And in that webpage, there's a link to the technical documentation that describes the data set.
All right. Anything else?
One more, Chris.
One more there, Doug, at the bottom, or from.
Yeah,
somebody about Python code, I think.
Ramesh, yeah, we'll work on getting Python
in
code
respect to
eventually.
the rate metric normalization. I'll have to look that one up. I can send you something. I can't remember exactly, Arthur, what that link was. So I'll try to find it and post it here. If you can send me an email, doug.ramsey@usu.edu, I'll try to find something.
Okay.
Anything else?
All right. Well, we'll work with Chris to get some of the code going, and otherwise, Doug, thanks again for your time and effort on this, and appreciate certainly USGS's through the LRS program and the funding of AmericaView and the mini grant opportunities that made this possible for Doug to continue down this road that he's been interested in, and we hope for a lot more of that success in the future. So if any questions and you need to get a hold of me, please feel free to contact me directly. You should have my email in the announcement for this, but please do contact me if you need anything. And with that, Bobby, I guess we can adjourn.
Right. Well, thank everybody for participating today. And if additional questions come up, after you've had a chance to review this again, don't hesitate to ask.